You guys, we're gonna pick up where we left off in the other video. And then Gray had just cut in and said that you are every time doing this. And trailed off. And he's also asking him, he's like, I've always wanted to say this, but who are you? ... Nightmare tells him, you don't just think you're going to say it every time, do you? ... Exclamation mark question. Because Gray was questioning his authority when he cut him off. And then now he's saying, I've always wanted to tell you ... And she's like, ... back to this. She's like, I was hazy and free. She's like, I want to tell you guys something too, ... She's like, why are these people ignoring me every time and then talking back to themselves, ... She's like, Nightmare is the first person and he should be the one to introduce a man called Gray. She's like, you can't get into the conversation and it's not interesting because you don't know about any of the content to it. Nightmare is recognized as veteran at this, and at best, I can't do anything about it. Like, just dodging if he doesn't want to answer something. She's like, ... She's like, usually, I think that this kind of scene should be done first, and then she just cuts in. She's like, introductions. She's like, no, a man without common sense, ... is not welcome, ... is not absolutely, she thinks. She's like, it's self-centered, ... or their world is small, ... She's like, he is the type that moves with the belief and enters to trap others without permission, ... She's like, oh, I think I can follow with the surface look of him, but only the face of him, just the face. Because she knows she's a little shallow. She's like, conveniently, there's good looks all around, just for people in this world. The individual's the role holder. She's like, if you lose your appearance, you can't survive in life, ... is the response. Because Nightmare can read this. He's like, Alice, after a long pause. And she's like, ... She's like, oh, sorry. I'm sorry about that. And he's just like, Alice, because that's her name there. She has no response. She's like, it's the same thing, and that is overwhelming. She's like, I feel the pressure in the air. Oh, when I'm with you, I'm suddenly a child, she thinks. She's like, chibi or child, ... And she's like, wow, it's creepy, ... It seems to be exciting for him to see me, ... And she's like, and trails off. She just cuts in. She's like, so, after a very long pause, I was quickly bored with the deliberate one-person play-by-play. Nightmare's like, huh? What is it? ... She's like, for some reason, Nightmare is frightened. It's not what? An introduction, she reminds him. Like, he hasn't introduced this person standing next to him. As a courtesy, self-introduction is something that you do, but if there's an acquaintance, you wait, because the introduction from the acquaintance is first. And she's giving, like, a manners lesson. I am a woman with a good household and good manners. She's like, that's why you have to treat me politely. And also treat others politely. She's like, I waited for that good introduction. Nightmare's questioning her, like, new solid attitude, because before she was, like, a little bit of a pushover somewhat. He's like, Alice, ... He's like, somehow. Are you not stronger than before? ? She's like, After a long pause, it's because I've been in this world for a long time. She's like, the nightmare looked complicated at this when she said that she was familiar with their world. It may have also been that he can read people's hearts. This man who calls himself Yumine, or like Dream Demon, has the troublesome ability of reading that. And she's like, I became much stronger. It is said that it opened me up again. And she's like, you have to be a little stronger. And like, you can see it on your front, but you're looking bad and sick. So she cuts into him a little bit with a dig. She's like, now, let's introduce him. She's talking about Gray.
こいつはトカゲのグレイリングマーク。
So he's like, after a long pause, oh, this is the lizard, Gray Ringmark. She's looking at him and Gray's just got no response.
どうも。
Finally he says thanks.
グレイリングマークだ。よろしく。
He's like, Gray Ringmark, nice to meet you. And then she's like, he repeats the introduction, but it seems not to be so rude, but as like more unfriendly after a pause. She's mentioning also that there's a lizard tattoo on the neck. And she has no response in that. On that. She's like, ring mark, question mark, question mark.
ああ、紹介にあった通り、グレイリングマークだが、何か?
So Gray actually cuts in here and he thinks she's asking him to repeat his name. So he's like, oh, as I mentioned in the introduction, it's Gray Ringmark. Something wrong? Question mark. She's like, ring marks with lizards are not really, and then trails off, ... She's like, this is easy to understand. It looks like you can get good leather, she tells them. She's thinking lizard, ... Speaking of ring marks, it is the finest lizard leather. And the lizard leather is often fine with a gray luster. She's like a lizard who can get good leather, ... Trails off with a grin. Nightmare busts out laughing because she's basically talking about skinning Gray because he's the role holder for like the actual lizard, as in the animal, like reptile. Nightmare laughs like he can't be satisfied. He's reading people's thoughts again. She knows it and trails off. She's like ... Or he's like that. And he's like, can you just call me Gray? And she trailed off again or he trailed off, and so she had a silence and she's like, I understand. Like Galland, this person doesn't seem to like his name. He has a tattoo and she's like, I don't think that I hate it. I'm Alice Little, regards, Gray, she tells him.
Ah, yoroshiku.
He's like, yes, nice to meet you. And then he has her name in there, so he said, nice to meet you, Alice. The lizard, Gray, is not unfriendly, but seems to be a shy person, and I don't feel that he is unfriendly, at least. The nightmare seems to be clear with me, but the conversation is unlikely to happen. For this is the first time that we meet. She's like, by the way, Nightmare. He's just like, You smoke in reality, she comments. He's like, oh. He's like, as you can see, I'm, and then question mark. She's like, I didn't know. She's like, I've never seen it before. When did you smoke? Or when did you start? And he has no response. Gray cuts in. He's just like, Nightmare. For some reason, Gray has a bitter face, she comments. He smokes himself, but doesn't seem to want Nightmare to smoke, she mentions. But Nightmare kind of taunts Gray. He's like, after a pause, Gray, do you have any complaints? Gray gives his own pause. He's like, no complaints, etc. She's like, question mark. And she's like, but Nightmare, your body, you're being bad to it, ... and trails off.
悪くない。私は常に健康体だ。
Nightmare's such a liar. He says, not bad, like, it's always good and I'm healthy. She's like, ... She's like, integrated, ... His mouth is ridiculous. She's like screaming this in her head. Nightmare's complexion is still the same and it looks unhealthy enough that he could fall down. She's like, as usual, but it's never different from who I've met before. She trailed off in between. And she's like, it looks great, ! She's like, it looks like he's actually dressing it up. She's like, I don't think it's because of my mind. Nightmare seems to want to dress it up, to like cover it up and like exaggerate. She tells him it doesn't look good on a haunted man. Use a pose that actually looks great.
事実偉いお方なんだ。ご友人のようだが、言葉は慎むように。
Gray actually cuts in though, and he's like, ... In fact, he is a great man, like a friend, but refrain from speaking, please, because he notices that she's giving Nightmare, like, crap. She's like, great, ? She's like, I feel like you were put through a lot last time, too, she thinks to him.
俺はいいんだ。俺は彼の部下だから。
But he responded back, he's like, I'm fine, I'm actually a subordinate. And she's like, ... If he's a subordinate, I feel like it's hard for him to say that. She trailed off. And then she's like, after a pause, was Nightmare great enough to have a subordinate? He doesn't look so great. The lizard brother, or like the roll holder, look like he's in tip-top, like, shape. Gray, I wonder if this person is also a part of my dream, she thinks and trails off. And then she directs her thoughts and she's like, can you read my thoughts?
いや、こいつには心は読めない。だよな、グレイ。
Nightmare's like, no, he can't read your heart. No, Gray, ? The innocent dreamer who reads a person's heart again and again was good at shaking it in Gray's face that he could.
俺には人の心など読めません。あなたの方が偉いです。
Gray's like, yeah, I can't read people's hearts. You're better, he tells him.
そうだろう、そうだろう。
And he's like, that's right, back. Nightmare's boasting.
偉いですから病院へ。
And Gray's like, you are great, so go to the hospital, please, type of thing. Trails
それ
off.
は嫌だ。
Nightmare's just like, I don't like that.
いい子ですから。
But Gray's kind of like coaxing him. He's like, because you are a good boy, ...
いいことが言うな。私は偉いんだぞ。命令するんじゃない。
But Nightmare doesn't like it. He's like, don't say a good boy. I'm a great man. And she's like, ... What? Trailing off. Maybe Nightmare, and then she trails off again. She's like, are you trying to show your subordinates a good face?
な、違う。私は元からいいところだらけだ。
Nightmare's like, no, it's full of good things from the beginning. And she has no response. And after a long pause, she's like, it is easy to understand this as it would be raw, lukewarm food, or like even a star. The boss who wants to dress this up so nicely is way too slim, and she trails off in between. She's like, it doesn't look like it's working at all. She's like me, Gray seems to know that the contents of Nightmare exist, and that no matter how dressed up he is, like, you'll still know that he is too. That he's just incapable. She's like, on the contrary, if you're one of them, then you're invited for, like, pity or laughter towards him. And she trails off in between. She's like, ... you're not an idiot, you... And then trailed off. Nightmare's like, no, and then ... way, is what I got out of that. Nightmare is an easy-to-understand man whom you don't need to read, like, anything to get that. And she's meaning that she doesn't need Nightmare's power to, like, read thoughts to, like, understand that he's pretty useless and, like, frail. She's like, there is a capacity, and so even if you read it there, like, you may not be so hungry for it afterwards, is what I got out of that.
私はいい格好をしたいとかでは
Nightmare's kind of flustered. He's like, I want to look good, ... And he's like, for ... And she's like, then what? Even just having a weak body, like, please give me some of those cigarettes. They do not suit you. Because she's scolding him. She's like, take better care. She's like, then what? What are you going to do if you just have a good looking face to people?
ひどいぞいいところがないとか似合わないとか
And then he tells her, Alice, it's terrible. You can't. And that's mean. Like, you're being cruel, he tells her. And trails off in between all of these. She's like, I'm not saying that there is no good side to you at all. If you want to show your good side, then you should stop smoking and then go to the hospital to take care of yourself. And she's like, well, suits should look good too. But she's like, stop smoking. And you might be dressed in style of the name Nightmare. And she's like, the grand name Nightmare type of thing. Because she was insulting him earlier. And she's like, I'm wondering if he's trying to take on a mysterious atmosphere. It does not seem to match the inner contents when she thinks of his name.
名前まで否定されるとははあショックのあまり気分が悪く
He's like, the Nightmare name is denied me. ... I feel bad and I feel so shocked. And he trails off.
君あまり叱らないでやってくれ叱るのは俺の役目だから
Gray actually defends him. He's like, please don't speak out too much. Again to her.
それと彼は偽名など使っていないそこは名誉のためにも味方しておこう
And he tells her that he doesn't use pseudonyms, so, like, that's his actual name.
ナイトメア・ゴッド・シャルククローバーの領土の領主本名だ
He's like, real name, Nightmare Godshack, and then Clover Territory Lord. Gives him a rank. She's like, ... Who is it? And she's...
このお方ナイトメア・ゴッド・シャルククローバーの領土の領主だ
She's confused because she only knows the name Nightmare, and so that's why she's asking him this. And he's like, this guy, Nightmare Goshak, the Lord of Clover Territory. And she's like, Goshak, right here. So who is that? She asks him. The name looks like they're great, and she's like, such a great acquaintance that he knows, and trailed off.
このお方だ
He's like, this is that person, ... She turns to him, she's like, Nightmare. That first line is that. And she's like, you had a last name? Yelling at him.
あったんだよすごいだろ偉いだろ
Nightmare's like actually boasting. He's like, it was there. It's amazing. Isn't it great? ? She's like, after a long pause, is that a name that isn't intimidating? She's like, no to herself, but that's not the case. The name should actually represent the body too, though, she's thinking.
ひどい
Nightmare's like, mean, cruel.
あ気分が悪くなってきた気分が
He's like, oh, I'm feeling sick. I feel sick. And then he gets sick.
ナイトメア様お気を確かに
And then he's like, Nightmare-sama, are you okay? And that's great. And Nightmare responds by getting sick again and coughing. She's like coughing and then Nightmare actually like throws up. And she's like hemorrhagic too. Like he's like hemorrhaging over there. It translated weird there. She trailed off. Because he's bleeding, like he's throwing up blood. And she's like, it's real because he came out of the dream. And seriously, you should definitely go to the hospital if this is the case. He's now taking the time to scold Gray. He's like, ugh, Gray, I'm going to forgive you. Trails off. He's like, for your lack of like, piety towards me, like your lord. Gray kind of flip-flops here. He's like, but I'm not your parent. What is frailty? ... And he's like, no, ... But don't leave anything. He's like, don't leave me, Nightmare. She's like, there is a little bit of a wrong feeling to this, but it's a classic touching scene. She thinks to herself after a long pause that it might be a parent-child drama that she's thinking of. A parent and then a child who dies, she thinks to herself. And Nightmare's like, sorry, so sorry. He's like, what, Gray? Gray tells him if you leave, don't leave the job unfinished at least. So he's more worried about the work being left behind than like Nightmare's health. He's like, because you were with John on a break or like a vacation, there was a lot of work, and if you can avoid it, then could you not die? He's like, because we're in trouble, go to the hospital, drink my medicine, and then keep warm. And she has no response to this, or he has no response to this. Nightmare's like, I don't like hospitals, I don't like work, and I don't like drugs or Gray. He's like, I want to die. ... 死んでいる場合じゃありません。さあ、休憩は終わりですよ。血を吐いている暇があったら仕事へ戻りましょう。He's like, it's not now that you're actually dead. He's like, now the break is actually over. He's like, we need to get back to work. 私は偉いんだぞ。血を吐いている上司に対して。Nightmare tells him, I'm great. Like, you're the one who's going against a boss who bleeds blood. ... Because he's like freaking out and sick right now. そうです、ナイトメア様。あなたは偉いんです。やればできる子です。Gray's kind of playing him up to his like egotism. He's like, yes, Nightmare, you are great and you can do it. Like, that's why I'm pushing you. ですから病院に行きましょう。死にたくなくてもこのままではそのうち死にます。And then he like backtracks a little. He's like, that's right, so let's go to the hospital to get this taken care of. 嘘だ、嘘だ。お前は私のことを尊敬していない。できる子だと思ってないだろう。Nightmare cuts in and he's like, it's a lie, it's a lie. You don't respect me at all. いいえ、あなたはできる子です。やればできる。And Gray's like, no, that's not the case, and you're not a child. You can do this. You can do it. She thinks you can do it, ... It is a parent-child drama, and it is also a gifted education version. She's like, let's praise and extend childhood, ... 尊敬していますよ。俺にはそんなに血をダラダラ吐きながらダダをこねたりできません。Gray tells him, I respect you, but I can't, like, have you working and spitting up so much blood. 俺なら病院に駆け込みます。根性あります、ナイトメア様。He's like, I'll run you to the hospital myself. ですが、その根性を病院へ行く方にも向けていただきたいんです。でないと死にますから。He tells him after a pause, but I would like you to actually turn your guts towards the hospital yourself. Otherwise, you might actually die. 病院へ行くことを考えただけで吐き気が。 Nightmare tells him, just thinking about the hospital, I'm nauseous. And he's like, nausea, and trails off in between these.
その吐き気を止めるために病院へ行くんです。大丈夫です。行ったら治してくれますから。
He's like, and then we're going to the hospital, so stop the nausea, Gray tells him.
嫌だ。ああ、グレイ。仕事とお前を残して先立つ私を許してくれ。
Nightmare's exaggerating, but he's like basically trying to freak Gray out because he knows that this is like his worst like fear, being left with all the work. So he tells him, I don't like it, but oh Gray, forgive me, ... for leaving you the burden, ... of the work to you.
これは残してくれて構いませんが、仕事は残さないでください。
He's like, I basically mind you leaving the job, but I don't mind you leaving. And she's like, ... She's like, a suggested ... question mark office drama question mark. Or ... she's like, you can look directly at it, or you can't look directly at it without tears, so maybe a moving hospital drama? She's like, I'm getting messed up. In a way, it's a point that you can't look at directly without tears coming, and trailed off. The audience rating is not likely to be earned, though, she mentioned after a pause. It is unlikely that we can advance into the Golden Globes with this. And she's like, trailed off, she's like, it's bad, and I hate to like raise this question, but where did Julius go in the clock tower? She asked them finally, cutting in.
時計と何のことだ?
Nightmare's like, clock tower, watchmaker, what's that? Playing dumb after like a long pause. She's like, don't be overwhelmed. The clock tower with Julius. Where are they, basically? She's like, there are no 2 or 3 clock towers. I thought it was completely blurry, but the Nightmare is actually not sure. She's like, I thought it was completely blurry to me, but the Nightmare is not sure.
ハートの国の時計塔のことですよ、ナイトメア様。ほら、ついこの前まで夢を通じて出張なさっていたじゃないですか。
It's interesting that Gray cuts in with this because he actually knows about this for some reason, and it's also mentioned at one point in time that he dragged like Nightmare out of the dream world, so he has like the ability to travel into dreams like a few of the other role holders, but they don't really touch on this. Anyway, he mentions that it's the clock tower in Heart Country, Nightmare. You know, you've actually been there on a business trip through a dream.
夢に引きこもって仕事をサボりながら。
And he's like, you were withdrawing from my work and squeezing into a dream.
何のことだったかな。気分が悪い。気分が悪いぞ。
Nightmare's like, well, what was that? I feel sick, I feel sick, ...
そうですか。記憶まで不確かになるようではやむを得ません。今すぐ入院の手続きを。
He's like, isn't it? Question mark about all of that. He's like, I can't stop trying to be uncertain about the memory. He's like, I can't stop trying to remember it, but he's like, I'm uncertain about my memory on it.
いやいや、思い出したぞ。思い出した。そうだそうだそうだった。ハートの国へ出張していたんだったな。
And then finally Nightmare's like, no, I remembered. And then he's like, yes, 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 it was a business trip to the Heart Country. And he like confirmed what Gray remembered.
そうです。出張なさってました。仕事をサボってね。
Gray's like, yeah, yes, it was definitely on a business trip.
思い出してくださってよかったです。おかげで仕事が溜まってますよ、山のように。
Gray's like, I'm glad you remembered, but thanks to you, I've accumulated work like a mountain.
サクサク片付けていただかなくてはなりません。さあさあ、仕事をしましょう。倒れるなら仕事の後にして。
He's like, you have to clean this up quickly. Come on, let's get the job done.
気分が悪い。気持ち悪い。体 調が悪くてとても仕事どころでは
Nightmare's like, I'm sick. I feel bad. I'm sick and I'm really at work. And trailed off.
ですから仕事の後ならいくらぶっ倒れてくださっても構いませんから